This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
My guest today on Sports Files is world-renowned angler, outdoorsman, and television host, Bill Dance. We often tossed around the term legend as if it's commonplace, but in reality, legendary status in any walk of life is not easily attainable. Earlier this summer on Sports Files, I was joined by a true coaching legend in Gene Stallings, and you won't get much of an argument from anyone. Today, I'm joined by a true legend of the outdoors, Bill Dance. In fact, Dance is perhaps the most recognizable name and face in the industry. Time to stroll down memory lane and reel in the big one with the man who made the UT baseball cap fashionable, Bill Dance. Next on Sports Files. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
We appreciate it. When you were a youngster and you're starting to fish and you're going the opposite way of your father and grandfather and great-grandfather who were all doctors, did you ever think you'd make a career out of it?
You know, I always dreamed of wanting to make a career in fishing because I love the sport so much. But I never dreamed it would become a reality. I never did. But you know, my wife always told me, if you set your mind to something and set goals and work toward those goals, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And you know, I had all the intentions in the world to become a doctor because, you know, my father was a doctor, my granddaddy, my great-granddaddy, for 5 generations.
Right down the line.
Yeah, they were. But I came along and I changed directions. And I saw a real bad wreck, and a motorcycle wreck, just about that that curve of life. And I looked at it and I said, I cannot do this.
Can't do that.
Absolutely. And my parents didn't persuade me either way. And I'm kind of glad that I went the direction I did.
So you start fishing, you start competing in things. You eventually get your first show in the late 60s here in Memphis.
Right.
What was that moment that you realized you've gone from just a competitive angler to now almost an icon in this? And now, of course, you are. But when was that moment when you knew that people are watching me? They care what I'm doing?
Well, you know, every year, you know, it just seemed to get bigger and bigger and bigger. When one door closed, another one would open. I never dreamed that it would get as big as it's actually gotten. It's you know, you're only as good as the people you work with. And I've been very, very blessed over the years. We've been doing this 46 years. And it's just grown and grown and grown, literally. I mean, it really has.
Besides all the people that help you out behind the scenes, and you're right, it takes a lot of people to
Absolutely.
put on these
Absolutely.
shows. But what would you say individually your key to success was as an angler, as a fisherman, just being a very good, and then also as a businessman?
Well, you know, the fishing tournaments that came along back in the late 60s, and that's what really kick-started Bill Dance's career.
Right.
I was extremely lucky back in those days. I did extremely well in those tournaments in the early days. And I always dreamed of going to work for a national lure manufacturer. And I had, in the late 60s, I competed in a few of the national bass tournaments. And as luck would have it, the first 3 I competed in, I finished second in the first 3. And then I went on the following year. I went to Smith Lake in Alabama, and I won it. Then I went to Ross Barnett down in Jackson, Mississippi, and I won it. And then I went to Rayburn in Texas, and I won it. So I won at 3 seconds, and then I came in boom, boom, boom with 3 first. And I had a tremendous amount of support, and I had 3 phone calls within the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
From 3 national lure manufacturers, 1 in Florida, 1 in Texas, and one of the oldest lure manufacturers called Head and Tackle Company, the company that made a lot of the old standard baits, the Lucky 13, just old-timey baits. And One of the companies in Texas, the originator of the plastic worm company that a lot of people probably don't remember, that a lot of the old timers remember, but a company called Cream Lure Company. Nick Cream was the originator of the plastic worm. And 50% of the fish I was catching back in those days was probably on the plastic worm. And Nick and Cosmo Cream invited Diane and I to come to Tyler, Texas. And we went down and spent the weekend with them. And I accepted a job to go to work. And he offered me a company vehicle, double my salary. And it was just a dream come true.
Yeah, I was going to say you already accomplished your dream there, and that was just the start of everything.
Oh, yeah, and it was just absolutely unbelievable. And and he wanted me to fish and take key buyers out and show them how to use his products, and to come to Rayburn, to go to Toledo Bend, and stay down there a week at a time and show his buyers how to rig worms. And they came out with these worm kits and Texas rig kits and packages, and fish with sports writers, and then to continue to fish in the tournaments. And it just,
you got the best of both worlds.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the sports started to explode.
Right, and then I was fishing, and then he was putting his products in stores, and I was doing store promotions and seminars and teaching people how to use their products. And I got to thinking, I said, if I can do this for him, I can do it for myself. And then we...
Is that when the idea came for the show?
Well, it was a little bit before then, and then a buddy and I started a company called Strike King Lure Company. Mm-hmm. And this was back in the late 60s. And tried that for a short period of time, and it just didn't really pan out with... I was fishing tournaments and wasn't really devoting the time to it as much as I could have. And finally, fishing with the writers, fishing with the buyers, fishing the tournament, and getting a lot of publicity and everything. And he was trying to run the business, and it was kind of lopsided. And finally, I just said, "Look, we tried it for a year or so, and it just, like I say, didn't pan out too good." So anyway, I had a call from another major lure company, and he said, "Look, we want you to come to work for us." And I told my buddy with the lure company, with Strike King, I said, "Look, you just take it and go with it." And
you're moving on.
I'm moving on. And he did extremely well with it.
Oh, good.
And I moved on. We started a local TV show right after that.
Well, let's jump ahead, because there's
Sure.
so much to get into. For those people who know Bill Dance Outdoors, but maybe don't know about a new show, you're involved in a number of shows and a new one coming on Discovery. Tell everybody where they can find you and the shows that you do in a year.
Well, we run year-round. We do our freshwater series on NBC Sports. You can find us weekdays, and you can find us on the weekends.
Okay.
On NBC Sports. And our saltwater series, we're on through the week, and we're on the weekend on the Outdoor Channel. And starting late December and the first of the year, we'll be on Destination America, which is one of the Discovery channels.
Fantastic.
And so we'll be running, I don't know how many times, we'll be running on that network about 3 times a week, and then 4 or 5 times a week on NBC Sports, and then 3 times a week on the Outdoor Channel. So it keeps us pretty...
It keeps you really busy,
Right.
More opportunities to see it.
Right.
Does it ever get old?
No, it doesn't. The have to situations sometimes get old when you're down, when you're pressured that you have to get this done, and you're trying to meet deadlines.
Time restraints, right?
But we've got, like I say, we've got great editors. We've got a lot of talented people that work real hard.
You can tell. You can tell by the finished product.
And
all right, let's do some rapid fire. Quick answers to these questions. Your favorite saltwater fishing hole or place to do saltwater, and then your favorite freshwater place to fish.
Well, I've got a lot of them.
Give me one.
People say, "Where's your favorite?" Well, where I can catch fish. Where the fish are biting. But I love the Florida Keys. Absolutely. I just got back from the Keys. I love the areas from Alamorada south down toward Marathon. It depends on the particular species that I'm fishing for. I love that area through there from Alamorada, Marathon, down through Grassy Key. on down toward Key West. That area I love for saltwater. I love the Destin area. I'm crazy about the Destin area.
Freshwater?
Now for saltwater. Now,
No. We're for freshwater.
For freshwater, I grew up fishing moving water, and I love moving water. I love the Tennessee River. I love Pickwick Lake. Pickwick Lake is just it's close to us right here. It's an hour and 45 minutes.
Easy to get to, right?
Easy to get to. Pickwick is a type of lake that offers 12 months a year fishing. It's got all three species of bass: the largemouth, the smallmouth, the Kentucky or spotted bass. It's got great catfishing. It's got good crappie fishing. It's got good, like I say, you can fish summer, fall, winter, spring, cold water, hot water, muddy water, clear water. It's just a great fishery.
Is there a place in all the years you fished that you have not gone to that you would love to? Still on your agenda to go to?
Yeah, there's one place I really want to go to and try that I've never been able to. It's the Snake River.
It's where Evel Knievel jumped the Snake River Canyon, right?
I'd like to go up there and fish for big sturgeon.
Everybody wants to know, and of course you're from Tennessee, it's obvious, but the origins of the UT cap, your trademark.
I got the first two T-caps I ever got. I got from Coach Dickey, Doug Dickey.
Sure.
And he sent me two of them, and I wore that cap. And the first time I wore it, I won a tournament. And then I wore it again. I won that second tournament, and the third one, I won the third tournament. And then they became just a trademark, and I've worn them ever since.
You are involved with Bass Pro because it's one of your sponsors. And we saw you at the groundbreaking of what's going to be the mega store where the pyramid is. What is the latest with that, Bill, and how involved will you be?
Well, Johnny and I have been close friends. Johnny Mars is the founder of Bass Pro Shop. And I remember when Johnny used to dream and talk about opening these type stores. They're on a much smaller scale, and that dream became a reality. And now they've just exploded, and he's got close to 60 of them nationwide now. But I remember about 7 years ago, I met him at Olive Branch. We got on an airplane, and we were flying to Sevierville for a store opening. And he said, "I got a big surprise for you." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I want you to make a decision for me." And I said, "What kind of decision?" And Jim Hagel, the president, they were both sitting across from me on Johnny's corporate plane. He said, "You need to make a decision for us before we get back. We're going to leave Sevierville. We're going down to Leeds, Alabama for a groundbreaking. Then we're going over to Pearl, Mississippi for a groundbreaking before we get back to Memphis. And then you and I are going to fish the Mississippi River for 2 days for catfish, as you well know." And I said, "Yeah, I know that." He said, "But you need to make a decision." And I said, "What's the decision?"
What's the question? Right?
"Should we take over the pyramid and put a Bass Pro Shop?"
7 years ago he asked you this?
Yeah. And I said, I looked at him, I said, "Well, you're crazy as a box of rocks." I said, "I'm not going to make that decision." And he said, "Well, yeah, you are." And I said, "Well, I can't make that decision. That's too big a decision." He said, "Well, think about it." And I thought he was kidding. And we got there, and later that night, after we did the opening at Sevierville, he said, "Have you made that decision?" I said, "No, I hadn't made it. I'm not going to." He said, "Yeah, you are." And the next day, he said, "We need a decision." And he kept kidding about it. And finally, Hagel, he looks at me and he said, "Bill, I need a decision. I'm serious." And I said, "You are serious, aren't you?" He said, "I am very serious." And I looked and I thought, and then Johnny, he said, "Look, I'll make it easy on you. We're going to fish the Mississippi River. If we catch a catfish over 30 pounds, we're coming to Memphis and we're going to put a pyramid in. And we're going to put a Bass Pro at the pyramid." And I said, "So a catfish is going to decide?"
He's going to decide it?
That's what he said.
Has anybody ever heard this story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so long story short, what happened?
The mayor knows about it.
Okay.
We brought this up.
You caught a catfish? How big?
It was a big thing.
How big?
And so we fished. And his good friend and my dear friend Jack Emmett went with us. And Jack has been with Johnny forever. And we went up the river. We took old James Big Cat Patterson with us. And of course, James took us up the river. You know, James knows the river like an otter knows water.
Right.
And it was a cold day. It was like 30 degrees. And we anchored the boat. We got 2 bites. and Jack caught one over 30 pounds. And Johnny said, "That does it. We're coming to Memphis." And the catfish decided it, and we've laughed about that for a long, long time. But we
That's
unveiled a big picture at the groundbreaking
of him with the catfish,
and unveiled it with Jack holding this big 30-pound catfish, and we told that story at the groundbreaking.
That's unbelievable.
But it's scheduled a fall of 2014.
2014.
Late fall.
We don't have a lot of time. You've had a chance to fish with celebrities galore, from politicians to singers to actors to sportsmen, obviously athletes. What is the one that stands out of all the celebrities you've taken out to fish, and the one that you weren't able to do?
The one that he wanted to do it and I wanted to do it, and we both tried so hard. When he could do it, I couldn't do it, and was
Norman Schwarzkopf?
Norman Schwarzkopf, General Schwarzkopf. He sent me a letter the day Desert Storm started, and I've got it. You saw it on my wall.
Exactly, and we'll show everybody that. He wanted to fish with you, and Desert Storm breaks out.
Yeah, and after that, our schedules never could get together.
Okay.
And America lost a wonderful, wonderful person.
They certainly did. Now, the one that stands out of the interviews and the fishing that you've done, it doesn't even have to be a show. The one athlete, the one personality, who would it be out of all the hundreds that you've done?
Oh, there's been. I had another one set to do with Billy Graham.
Oh, really? The Reverend Billy Graham?
Reverend Billy, and that was another figure that I really wanted so bad to do a show with, and it came close.
Right, but you didn't get that one done.
The scheduling, the Tennessee River, Mother Nature messed us up on that.
But of the ones you've done, which is the one you remember the most? You said, give me the one interview. What would it be that you've done?
I can tell you the ones that stand out was with each one of my 4 children there when they caught their very first fish. Those are
without question.
And then 3 of my grandchildren there when they caught their very first.
How many grandchildren you have?
I've got 7.
Fantastic. But how about a celebrity? Give me one. Everybody's waiting with bated breath here.
Well,
the one.
The funniest ones were like with Terry Bradshaw.
You were his best man in his wedding.
Yes.
He's been married a few times, though, right?
Yeah.
Which
his
one?
Second wedding. Yeah. His second wedding.
It is unbelievable. Bill, you going to do this for another 40 years?
Hope to do it forever and then a little bit more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
we
buddy.
Appreciate
it's always good to be with you.
Same here.
Thank you, buddy.
We'll take a break. We'll come back with overtime right after this. The Memphis area has had its share of success stories in professional golf, from Middlecoff to Roberts to McKeel. In addition, the area has produced some of the best amateur golfers anywhere, including David Gossett and Tim Jackson. Now, one of the top players the last few years has been University of Memphis product Matt Cooper, who earlier this summer captured his second straight Pub Links championship. Recently, I spent some time with Matt to find out more about his game and his future. Coop, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you, Greg.
Definitely in your wheelhouse here at Tunica National, beautiful golf course that you work for, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But congratulations, 2 straight years winning the Pub Links. Way to go.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
It was a little different, though, this year. Normally it's 3 rounds. This one ended up being 36 holes.
Correct.
But you ended up getting in that first round before the rain stopped play. Funny story, because you had a great score, and then things changed.
Yeah, the first round was at Audubon, and I was like the second group off that morning, and I played my round, no problem, in perfect weather. Shot 68, 2 under, and went out to my parents' house in Germantown and kind of hung out that day in perfect weather. And I was stopping by Audubon on the way back home to see how Eli and some of the guys were doing.
Right.
And it was pouring down rain. They were all in a delay. So they kind of waited out the delay as long as they could, and they ultimately had to make the decision to wash the first round out. They weren't going to be able to get everybody back out on the course the next morning, still go play the second round at Galloway, so everybody started clean, 36 holes on that Saturday.
That must be tough on the psyche to try to get yourself ready to go for 36 after you just posted a good score.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of a frustrating decision because I thought Audubon was probably the hardest of the 3 courses, and a good round there could kind of separate me from the field a little bit. But once they made the decision, I gave my uncle Jimmy Darr, who was a part of the decision, a hard time. But once the decision was made, I just kind of tried to put that out of my head and just start over on Saturday and play a 36-hole event.
Well, obviously it worked as you win your 2nd straight Pub Links. What does it mean to you to win those titles, to also fare so well in many of the state tournaments that take place, as you try to become, and you already are, but maybe the best, following in the footsteps of the great Tim Jackson, the best amateur in the area?
Well, it's been cool because, like I said, I took a few years off from competitive golf, and about the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of picked it back up. And the first year or so, first 2 years in the Pub Links in particular, were kind of tough ways to lose and lost them. But to finally come through last year and close the deal and get a win, and then to back it up again this year, it's definitely kind of it's kind of good. Kind of confirms the hard work I've been putting in, and to close the deal was very cool.
As many know, you played at the University of Memphis, Germantown High School. Why do you think you're playing your best golf right now that you just turned 34 years of age? Why is it all coming together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get asked that all the time because I'm definitely playing the best right now that I have in my whole life. I think it's just kind of just maturing a little bit on the golf course, kind of been working down here at Tunica National and kind of having Bob Walcott as a guy to kind of bounce some ideas off of.
Former touring pro
who's a great teacher and has helped me a lot with my game. But just kind of maturing on the golf course, learning to kind of not take everything so serious and so hard. Kind of just my attitude's gotten a lot better, and then quite honestly, my short game over the past 2 or 3 years, being down here and having this practice facility and maybe sneaking off 30 minutes here and there around lunch or whatever and just chipping and putting. That's probably been the #1 reason why I've been playing so much better.
After you graduated college, you would normally think anybody who played collegiate golf at that level, Division I level,
Right,
would be thinking to turn professional. That's not the route you decided to go.
Well, it was always in the back of my mind as a kid growing up. That's obviously what any competitive golfer wants to do. But I played 4 years at Memphis and never really had good enough results to warrant turning pro right out of college. I did take about 1.5 or 2 years right after school and tried to travel, and I played in some big amateur tournaments and was fortunate enough to not have to go to work right away. But I never got the results and never really convinced myself that it was worth turning pro and going to Q school and anything like that. So became a working man.
You've had a terrific summer, first alternate for the U.S. Amateur.
Correct.
What are the goals now for you in your amateur career?
Well, definitely to play in as many USGA events as possible. I was lucky enough to play in the U.S. Amateur last year.
What was that experience like?
It was awesome. Cherry Hills Country Club out in Denver,
Wow,
where a lot of history. That was my first USGA event ever, and really the biggest tournament I ever played in. So there were some nerves involved. I didn't play a great round the first day. Played okay the second round of stroke play, and missed making match play by 5 or 6 shots. But it was a great experience, and kind of to get a taste of amateur golf at the highest level was pretty cool. But the goal's there, and to compete in state level events, state opens and state amateurs, hopefully get in contention and win some of those, and maybe try to be the Tennessee Player of the Year, Amateur Player of the Year, and keep making the Amateur Cup teams at the end of the summer. All those are good goals of mine.
As I mentioned, Tim Jackson, a guy you emulate, Packard DeWitt, so many terrific amateur golfers in the area. Would you be satisfied for your golf career if I said, listen, you're going to be the best amateur for a period of time, but you're never going to get a chance to play professionally? Are you satisfied with that?
Oh, absolutely. At this point in my life, for sure. Yeah. The pro, well, you never know what happens when you turn 50.
Champion
if
store,
you stay in good health and your game stays sharp, that's always a possibility. But no, definitely my goals these days are all within the amateur ranks.
Did you always know that somewhere, somehow, you're going to be involved in golf for a profession? And tell us a little bit about your profession here at Tunica National.
Yeah, definitely was something I obviously got into at a fairly early age. Through my grandfather and my dad and my uncle Jimmy, big golf family. So it was always something that I loved and was passionate about. And then, once I started working, I got this opportunity through Bob Walcott to come down here at Tunica National and get involved in the golf business, and it's been fantastic. It's been wonderful, great for my game, and then just great for overall just satisfaction and doing something you love to do every day.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure keeping up with what you've been doing, Matt. So make sure you continue to let us know, and we'll keep everybody up to date with what you're doing on in your tournaments, amateur tournaments, state tournaments, of the like, and who knows what will happen for the future. But always great to see that.
Good to say. Thanks a lot. I will.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.
And that'll do it for this week's show. Next week, it's our SEC football preview show. And as we say goodnight, check out some of the world famous Bill Dance bloopers. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.